Today we celebrate World Mission Sunday. It's a day set aside for Catholics worldwide to recommit themselves to Christ's missionary activity through prayer and sacrifice. It is celebrated throughout the year, really. And this missionary activity or collection is used around the world for our missions, especially for our diocesan missions. And there are over 1,000 missionary or mission dioceses, as they're called, around the world. I have a question here. Is anybody here baptized? Oh, shut up, Phil. Gosh, I thought most of y'all were baptized. Oh, it's too early in the morning. We're not ready for those kind of exercises yet. Now the question is, how many here are called to be missionary? We should have exactly the same number of hands. There's Phil up there waving his hand. Yes. Everybody is called by the fact that they're baptized to be a missionary. But missionary does not by default mean that you have to go to a foreign country or a foreign land. The difficulty is great when we understand that through our baptism we are called to missionary work. Now if you look at that first reading, the Lord was pleased to crush him in infirmity. And being a missionary, whether it's here or there, requires infirmity. It requires suffering. Just this past week, we celebrated the North American martyrs. The French Jesuits who came from France to northern United States. And we have cities like La Crosse, Prairie du Chien, parishes that were founded by those first round of missionaries. And many of them lost their lives and sacrificed themselves for the faith. And it goes on in the reading. If he gives his life as an offering for sin, in Isaiah, he shall see his descendants in a long line, and the will of the Lord shall be accomplished through him. A missionary gives his life like the suffering servant. A missionary works for the good of the other without counting the cost. And the fruit of that work, like the work of Christ and his suffering and death, is seen in their spiritual children. Time for another tough question. How many missions does the Diocese of La Crosse have? Anybody know? I used to live at both of them. Okay, now you know there's two. Oh, I gave away the answer. The mission that we first had was started in 1956 by Father Joe Walieski, whose cause is up for canonization. Back in 1955-56, he went down and started the mission parish in Santa Cruz, Bolivia. And he called the parish Santa Cruz, Holy Cross. Why? Because in the process of attempting to build, the walls fell 3 times. Jesus fell 3 times. Of course, after the 3rd time the walls fell, they sent down another priest to help Father Joe. Father Joe was not good in construction. But that doesn't mean he wasn't holy. I met him. He's a very holy man. And then he came back, and somebody said he was in Thorpe for a while. I know he was in Mozambique because my aunt and uncle mentioned it. And he was at various other parishes. And then he went back again. There was an earthquake back in 1971 or 72 in Peru, and 50,000 people died. And so he went down there and he formed a parish out of this newly formed slum known as Villa El Salvador on the south side of Lima. And he formed this parish, and so he was responsible for about 500,000 Catholics as they were coming in in the early 70s, and he formed a parish, and he called it St. Joseph's. And that was in many ways to fulfill a wish of his mother. His mother had wished to have a son of hers that became a priest. She wished to have a son named Joseph. She wished to die on one of the feasts of St. Joseph, and to have some church or chapel or something built for the honor of St. Joseph. And so he built that parish, and then in the 1980s, he was back at it again. He went down and saw the kids on the street, and he said, somebody's got to take care of these kids. And so he started to take care of a small number of kids in his house. And then the Pope came. And so, of course, who do they send from Peru? To the Polish priest, who is Bishop of Rome and the Pope. Well, they send the Polish priest, Father Walejewski, who knows about as much Spanish or Polish as somebody who stopped speaking Polish when they went to kindergarten. So he didn't know too much Polish. And so he gave a nice introduction to the Pope, and then he talked to the Pope and said, you know, it'd be really nice if we had something to help these young people here. And the Pope was like, by all means. And he thought the Pope was just being nice. And then money came in, $50,000 to start a new orphanage 25 years ago. So he was able to start this mission. And at one point he had 117 kids there. And then, you know, growing slowly, gradually, but building up this wonderful place. And then he retired, I think in 99 or year 2000. And then Father Sebastian Kolajczyk took over the mission work, and he's still there today. This mission right now has 64 kids in the Boys Town program at the orphanage in Peru. 8 families with 8 kids in each family, 8 boys or 8 girls, working together, learning those skills necessary for life in the context of a family. And if you looked in the Times, I brought it along. There's wonderful things in here. There's an envelope in there specifically for the orphanage. There's advertisements in there for the orphanage. And it's always fun to see these pictures from the orphanage, because I look at the picture and go, hey, I took that picture. So sometimes they take my material, and that's okay. They don't need to give me credit. I freely do that. I don't expect royalties or anything like that. But then I was looking through here, and I saw this one here on page, where did she, now I can't find it. Well, anyway, it was in here, and I was like, hey, I know that girl. It's an article, you should read it. It's about Stephanie Schaub. She is now living in Okinawa, Bolivia. It's a small town about an hour from Santa Cruz. The reason why I thought that story was fascinating was because I was the one who interviewed her and took her with me to Peru when she was a little teenager. I think she was a junior in high school. And so she went down there. Maybe she was a sophomore. And then when she went down there, and we're getting ready to leave, and I remember her specifically saying, I don't want to go home. And I said, you have to. So she did. And then 2 years later, 2 years ago, 2010, I went down again, and she went now as a college student, majoring in Spanish and social work. So she went down again, and I told her, you know, you're 19 now. You're an adult. You don't have to go back. She goes, I've been thinking about that. She did go back to finish her degree, and now she's living. She just went there last month to Bolivia. And the reason why I'm mentioning all these things is because, in case you hadn't noticed, I'm really interested in our mission work, in our South American missions. I've lived in both places. But we can see the benefits of this mission appeal directly. Many of you have encountered somebody who's been to our missions in Peru or in Bolivia. In case you hadn't noticed, Harriet Lawby is not here right now. She's in Peru. She's going to be visiting the orphanage with Father Al Jakubowski. Does that name ring a bell? I know Father Al. He's a nice guy. I saw pictures of him with this in the background. He must have been a priest here for a while. Nice guy. And so they're going down there and they're going to visit the orphanage. They're not going to spend the whole time at the orphanage, but it's a further kind of making aware of what's going on down there. Next summer, there's already 2 groups. I was going to sign up a group and go down next summer. There's already a medical mission going down with doctors, an eye mission to check and to do like cataract surgery and to check for the kids and their prescriptions on their glasses, and the dental mission to pull teeth, fill cavities, do whatever they do, and a mission that's going to be going down there before World Youth Day, and then they're going to go on to World Youth Day, and another group that's going to go to World Youth Day, and it's in Brazil, and then on the way back they're going to stop at the orphanage. And so there's so many people going to the orphanage, I couldn't get in. And that's telling you that the missionary heart of the diocese is growing. The mission was able to just recently break ground and dedicate a new church in Bolivia. The church that Father Joe Walieski built back in 1959 holds about 300. And that's not enough to hold the people for daily Mass. It's certainly not enough to hold them on Sunday Mass. They have Masses all the time. And so now they have a church that seats 1,000. And they're still packing it for, they used it for the Triduum, for Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and Easter Sunday. And it's packed. There's not enough room yet. And they have many Masses there. And it's a sign of the growth and development of the faith. That parish has been served since 1956 by our diocese. We have been sending priests there and lay people there as well to help minister in this great need. We have had diocesan priests at the orphanage in Peru since Father Joe Walieski founded that back in the 80s. There is a continual presence, a continual missionary outreach in our diocese, and that is so necessary. I just want to conclude this with a message from Pope Benedict for World Mission Sunday this year. Dear brothers and sisters, I invoke on the mission of evangelization ad gentes, that means to the people, and in particular to its workers, an outpouring of the Holy Spirit, so that God's grace may enable it to advance firmly in the history of the world. Together with Blessed John Henry Cardinal Newman, I would like to pray. O Lord, accompany your missionaries in the lands to be evangelized. Put the right words on their lips and make their labors fruitful. May the Virgin Mary, Mother of the Church and Star of Evangelization, accompany all gospel missionaries. So we ask for your support in these necessary works. This is very closely connected with the Diocesan Annual Appeal. That's why they're done basically at the same time. Last week we showed the video. I'm sorry I didn't have any popcorn. But we showed the video, and the bishop talked about the need for the appeal and the good that comes from that, and how much of that goes towards our missionary work. And this mission appeal for the propagation of the faith goes to many of those same causes and is very necessary. We have been given a lot. We have homes, we have cars, we have hot water, we have all of these gifts. And the Lord is challenging us to have the heart of a missionary, which we are called to by our baptism, to show the Lord our gratefulness through our support of all of these missions. So in the bulletins, there is the information on the mission, but also an envelope that you can take home and fill out, drop in the collection, or mail it in. And this work goes towards the missions to help that cause. As well, the Diocesan Annual Appeal helps both domestically and internationally. And that is a good thing. You know, sometimes I was talking to some priests, they're like, I don't like asking for money. And I don't like asking for money either until I saw what good was being done. what wonderful things were being done with this income. I can assure you, if we didn't do that appeal, I wouldn't be here, because I wouldn't have been able to afford to go to the seminary. The appeal paid for my way to go through school. You know how much it costs to send a seminarian to school for a year? Just tuition. Just tuition is like $24,000 a year. Seminarians don't have that kind of money. Families don't have that kind of money. So it requires the work and the support of everybody to make that possible. So I would challenge you. Now, I believe so much in this diocesan annual appeal and the mission appeal. I gave $1,000 to the annual appeal. I gave $1,000 to the propagation of the faith. And I would challenge you, maybe not to give $1,000, but to ask the Lord prayerfully, how can I help? Not just with offering money, but with prayers. Praying for the good work in the missions that takes place. And whenever possible, to support those who are doing the work in the missions. Through prayer, through financial support, and through our actions. Letting other people know that we have these wonderful things going on in our diocese and for our diocese throughout the world. Now we've got people here, I know Phil for sure, he went to India, and I'm sure there's other people from this parish who have experience in these areas. So, prayerfully consider, what is it the Lord is calling you to do? And I also leave you with this, I guarantee you that you will not be outdone in generosity. That the Lord will repay you spiritually for all that you do for Him and for others. So on this Mission Sunday, we ask in a special way that the Lord would look kindly upon all of our missions, the missions throughout the world, and those who carry Christ's message and do the work of evangelization.